This isn't a sprint. This is a marathon that we're in disaster response and recovery, and we're just starting now the real marathon, the long-term recovery portion.
It's just so targeted. It was like you see a home and you wouldn't even know there was a home there. There was no framing, nothing. And just people walking up and down the roads and people trying to get through and manage the best way they could. Next morning when I came up, I was just so struck. Not really by this church, I was grateful it was standing, but by just the nature of the damage.
And I just thought, you know, they were working through that, the damage, but also the death of their beloved church member.
One of the first things I heard, and it just made my heart feel so good, was one of the members came up and said, "We have to worship here this Sunday."
Well, there are many phases of disaster. There's relief, response, and recovery. And right now we're in the midst of switching from the response phase of the disaster to long-term recovery. And there's a gap. And unfortunately for people, they're still excited and want to go and do things and they're energized, but this is a time for extreme patience because a lot of things have to come into play first. When we transition to long-term recovery, UMVM really takes control of that process because it involves not only reaching out to local congregations and Virginia Conference resources, but it's going to take resources beyond the borders of the state of Virginia. We have a disaster relief fund, a special advanced special 5037, that is a savings account is what I refer to it as, where people can donate money to that account, and that's going to start the funding process for us to be able to go out and get construction materials and start that long-term recovery process. Rebuilding an 800 square foot home costs about $60,000 from foundation up. And that's using volunteer labor. And really you can't put a dollar figure on the volunteer labor. It is so important, so special, and necessary for that recovery process to begin.
I think the big thing is disaster is one thing that brings everybody together.
In the future, in the upcoming months and years ahead, I just really encourage people not to let it drop off the radar.
There's a saying in the Methodist Church, we are the last ones out. We turn the lights out. You know, we stay until the last nail is driven in the last house that needs to be rebuilt. And we're going to live up to that expectation, I hope and pray, but it's going to take the annual conference, churches and congregations to help us step out in faith to do this job.